Mahaparivacharana. Maybe this concept is beyond the understanding of the cattle class. Both the women looked at each other, unsure of how to respond. I looked at my program director and said, "Hey, I want to tell you a story." I could see from her face that she was feeling awkward. A story in the middle of a serious meeting? I began. George Bernard was a great thinker of his time. One day a dinner was arranged at a British club in his honor. The rules of the club mandated that the man wear a suit and a tie. It was probably the definition of a clause in those days. Bernard, being who has, he was walked into the club in his usual casual attire. The doorman looked at him and said very politely, "Sorry, sir, I cannot allow you to enter the premises." "Why not? You are not following the dress code of the club, sir." "Well, today's dinner is my honor, so it's my words that matter, not what I wear," replied Bernard, perfectly reasonable in his explanation. "Sir, whatever it may be, I can't allow you inside in these clothes, sir. Sorry." Shaw tried to convince the doorman, but he wouldn't budge from his stand. So we walked all the way back to his house, changed into appropriate clothes, and entered the club. A short while later, the room was full, with people sitting in anticipation of his speech. He stood up to address the audience, but first removed his coat and tie and placed it on a chair. "I'm not going to talk today," he announced. There were surprised murmurs in the audience. Those who knew him personally asked him about the reason for his out-of-character behavior. Shaw narrated the incident that happened a while ago and said, "When I wore a coat and tie, I was allowed to come inside. My mind is in no way affected by these clothes I wear. This means that to all of you who patronize the club, the clothes are more important than my brain. So let the coat and the tie take my place instead." Saying this, he walked out of the room. I stood up. "The meeting is over," I said. We exchanged cursory goodbyes and I walked back to my room. My program director followed me. "Your decision regarding the school was right. But what was that other story all about? And why now? What is this cattle class business? I didn't understand a thing." I smiled at her obvious confusion. "Only the cattle class folks will understand what happened back there. You don't worry about it." The old man and his god. A few years back, I was traveling in Tanjavur district of Tamil Nadu. It was getting dark, and due to depression over the Bay of Bengali, it was raining heavily. The roads were overflowing with water, and my driver stopped the car near a village. "There is no way we can proceed further in this rain," said the driver. "Why don't you look for shelter somewhere nearby rather than sit in the car?" Stranded in an unknown place among unknown people, I was a bit worried. Nevertheless, I retrieved my umbrella and marched out into the pelting rain. I started walking towards a tiny village whose name I cannot recall now. There was no electricity, and it was a trail walking in the darkness and the rain. In the distance, I could just make out of the shape of a small temple. I decided it would be an ideal place to take shelter, so I made way to it. Halfway there, the rain started coming down even more fiercely, and the strong wind blew my umbrella away, leaving me completely drenched. I reached the temple soaking wet. As soon as I entered it, I heard an elderly person's voice calling out to me. Though I cannot speak Tamil, I could make out the concern in the voice. In the course of my travels, I have come to realize that the voices from the heart can be understood, irrespective of the language they speak. I peered into the darkness of the temple and saw an old man of about 80. Standing next to him was an equally old lady in a traditional 9-yard cotton saree. She said something to him and then approached me with a worn but clean towel in her hand. As I wiped my face and head, I noticed that the man was blind. It was obvious from their surroundings that they were very poor. The Shiva temple, where I now stood, was simple with a minimum of ostentation in its decoration. The Shivalinga was bare except for the bilva leaf on top. The only light came from a single oil lamp. In that flickering light, a sense of calm overcame me, and I felt myself closer to God than ever before. The halting Tamil. I asked the man to perform the evening Mangalaharati, which he did with love and dedication. When he finished, I gave him a 100 rupee note as a dakshina. He touched the note and pulled away his hand, looking uncomfortable. Politely he said, "Amma, I can make out that the note is not for 10 rupees, the most we usually receive. Whoever you may be in a temple, your devotion is important, not your money. Even our ancestors have said that a devotee should give as much as he or she can afford to us. To me, you are a devotee of Shiva, like everyone else who comes here. Please take back this money." I was taken aback. I did not know how to react. I looked at the man's wife, expecting her to argue with him and urge him to take the money. But she just stood quietly. Often in many households, a wife encourages a man's greediness. Here it was opposite. She was endorsing her husband's view. So I sat down with them, and with the wind and rain whipping up frenzy outside, we talked about our life. I asked them about themselves, their life in the village temple, and whether they had anyone to look after them. Finally, I said, both of you are old. You don't have any children to look after your everyday needs. In old age, one requires more medicines than groceries. This village is far from any of the towns in the district. Can I suggest something to you? At that time, we have started an old age pension scheme, and I thought, looking at the worn out but clean clothes, they would be the ideal candidates for it. This time, the voice spoke up. Please do tell child. I will send you some money. Keep it in your nationalized bank or post office. The interest on that can be used for your monthly needs. If there is a medical emergency, you can use the capital. The old man smiled on hearing my words, and his face lit up brighter than the lamp. You sound much younger than yes. You are still foolish. Why do I need money in this great old age? Lad Shiva is also known as a Vaidyanathan. He is a Mahavaidya, a great doctor. This village we live in has many kind people. I perform the puja and they give me rice in return. If either of us is unwell, the local doctor gives us medicine. Our wants are very few. Why would I accept money from an unknown person? If I keep this money in the bank, like you are telling me to, someone will come to know and may harass us. Why should I take on these worries? You are a kind person to offer help to unknown old people, but we are content. Let us live as we always have. We don't need anything more. Just then the electricity came back and a bright light lit up the temple. For the first time, I saw the couple properly. I could clearly see the peace and happiness on their faces. They were the first people I met who refused to help in spite of their obvious need. I did not agree with everything he had just said, but it was clear to me that his contentment had brought him peace. Such an attitude may not let you progress fast, but after a certain period in life, it is required. Perhaps this world, with its many stresses and strain, has much to learn from an old couple in a forgettable corner of India. Mahaparivajan.